Welcome to the Nick Blevins Family Ministry Podcast. Our goal is to help you maximize your church's potential. You'll hear from top leaders in children's, student, and family ministry about the principles and practices they use. Now here's your host, Nick Blevins.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 120 of the podcast. In this episode, I get to interview my friend Kevin Monahan again. Kevin's been on the podcast a couple times. We talked about multi-site family ministry. In the first episode, we talked about the residency program they have at his church, which is really, really strong. And a lot of people love that episode, contacted him, learned about what they do so they could create something similar at their church. In this episode, Kevin and I talk about something that he calls the Monahan 10. It's a list of 10 things that are in some ways values or just attributes of him as a leader, like what he wants from his team, what you can expect from him. It's a really great thing. He kind of referenced it one time at a breakout at a conference, and everybody wanted to know what it was so they could take it and adapt it. So I wanted him to come on the podcast and share it with you. So that's what he does. Now, before we jump into that interview, I want to let you know, if you're listening to this when it comes out, there's just a couple days left to sign up for courses and for coaching with Ministry Boost this fall. In fact, I asked Kevin about a couple of the coaching networks that he's leading, a course that he and Kenny and I are leading together about aligning your NextGen team. But just 2 days left here to sign up for fall. We're going to kick things off in October here, which we're really excited about. If you're like me, you wait till the last minute sometimes before you sign up for something, which I'm sure a lot of you are doing, but we already have a lot of folks in groups, in courses. There are limits to some of the coaching groups, well, to all of them really, and even some of the courses. So be sure to sign up now if you're interested. But all of that closes Thursday night at midnight. You can check all of that out at ministryboost.org. Let's go ahead now and jump into my conversation with Kevin about the Monahan 10. Well, I'm talking with my friend Kevin Monahan. Kevin, welcome back on the podcast again.
Hey, Nick. Thanks for having me, buddy.
You bet. Well, we're going to talk about something that was like a big hit when you were part of a breakout panel at the Orange Conference last year, which I'm sure has come up in other settings, and I've heard you talk about it before. But even more than just this list of 10 things that is really cool, and I think a lot of people loved, and when they heard it, they're like, oh, give me a copy of that. They want to take it and use their own and all that stuff. But even just like the heart behind it, why you do it, all that stuff. But before we jump into that, just in case somebody hasn't heard a previous podcast with you or isn't familiar with you, tell us again, introduce yourself a little bit, give us an update. How are things going?
Yeah, great, man. Thanks for having me. My name's Kevin Monahan, and I work at 12 Stone Church in the greater Atlanta area, and I serve as NextGen Pastor, and so I work with students, kids ministry, college ministry, young adults. And, been doing that at 12 Stone for like it's almost going to be 7 years, kind of at the turn of the year. And, been doing NextGen ministry for next summer. It'll be 25 years, man. I started as a summer intern at First Baptist Church of West Palm Beach in Florida, a middle school intern. And so, what started as a simple ask is now turned into a career, man. And so love working with kids and students, next gen stuff. And, love the church that I'm at, love the people I get to work with. Man, that's the best part, is being able to be a pastor to volunteers, leaders, staff, and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, man, been married to my wife for 18 years. We got 3 kids, one in high school, one in middle school, one in elementary. So basically one in each ministry, man. So it's awesome to be part of.
Yeah, and it probably means a really complex schedule between 3 different
for sure,
ages. I can't even imagine.
For sure.
So you have this list, the Monahan 10, which is what we're going to talk about, and then some of the story behind it and how leaders could come up with something similar or use that in their leadership. Yeah. But tell us, what is the Monahan 10? What's the origin of that?
Okay, so, you know me, we work together in a sense. So I just love real practical ministry, and I love helping people get from where they are to the next level. And it all started with this, about 21 years ago. I had just met my wife. We'd been dating for 5 months, and then it's that time where you have to go meet the parents, you know? So, we grew up in West Palm Beach. My wife is from Miami. And then we were going down there and I met my future mother-in-law, which I didn't know at the time was going to be my future mother-in-law. And as we were talking, she jokingly said, "Oh, you're dating my daughter." And it was her oldest of kids. She goes, "Here's kind of two things you need to know. Like, keep her fed and keep her caffeinated and she'll be happy." And I kind of laughed, you know, because, you know, you get those pieces of advice. But I'm going to tell you, like, 22 years later, she was absolutely right. I mean, like, for our first 6 months, like, I kept like Snickers bars in the car and snacks, and we made sure that I was getting coffee and filling up the Starbucks cards and all of that. And so as I began to grow in my ministry, as I did with my marriage, I started eventually like leading staff, and I love leading staff. It's my favorite thing to do. I feel like it's one of my biggest strengths. I just love people, networking, and all of that stuff. And just like my mother-in-law gave me a glimpse into this relationship that I really cared about, that I wanted to grow in and I wanted to develop, I thought, man, so would my employees. And so I thought, well, what if I just carved out a few things at first and said, hey, these are my really clear expectations. Well, as you can imagine, the first round was more of like, hey, this is what I want you to do. And it wasn't that transparent. But I didn't really have a lot of that modeled. I don't know about you coming up through ministry, but like, to be honest, I didn't have a lot of real transparent supervisors. I had great coaches, but guys who kind of like, hey, this is what I need you to do, go do this. But I didn't really know what motivated them. I didn't really know what the win was from their perspective. And I thought as I began leading staff, I wanted to kind of break that chain a little bit. And I said, let me come up with even more things that were a little bit about me, things that I value, that from my perspective. And honestly, Nick, the majority of them are perspectives, but they're perspectives of a supervisor to their staff. Now, most of us, if we've ever started a new job, we want to know, how do we win? How do we succeed? How do we make this happen? Right? And most of us would wish we had a list of those things that our supervisor valued. And so I said, well, I'm just going to create that list. And even the second draft was less about me, but I started thinking, man, why am I writing this? Because I know that I can articulate some of the things I value, but let me invite some of the people that I've had the privilege to serve with to come in and say, hey, have you thought about this one? Because actually you really care about that. And I honestly, man, it wasn't a blind spot because these are all good things, but like I saw a pattern of consistency from employees that would raise their hand and say, well, man, have you thought about this? Because like, honestly, dude, that's a big deal to you. And that isn't really a big deal to me. And then as it started getting decades and decades, when I started doing exit interviews and interviewing people, it really just helped me in the aspect of clarifying what a win was and what value is. It helped my employee because they knew what I was looking for. But then the final part was the whole the community involvement. It helped create and foster an environment where people started looking at themselves, even as an employee, and would say, man, these are the things that I value. And these are the things that I want to accomplish. These are the things that energize me and inspire me. These are the things that help me know if I'm getting. And now when you've got 5, 6, 15 people in the room that can clearly articulate the win, are in a room with other people that can clearly articulate their win, now we speak each other's love languages. We can understand each other so that like how I speak to you may be different than how I speak to somebody else. And so that's kind of the background. And it's gone. I've been probably doing this for about, I don't know, maybe like 10 years unofficially. And now like anytime there's new staff, when I come on a position, I do this. I've had, man, probably 30, 40 different people that I've worked with take and make their own version. And it may be 5, it may be 15, it may be whatever. And it's a really great process for you to figure out as a leader, man, what are those preferences that you value, those things that you're looking at, and how can you kindly and clearly pass those on to those that you give oversight. And it's only fair to them, right? Like it's not fair to be a supervisor and tell somebody, hey, I want you to go win. Well, what does winning look like? You know, that common language needs to be there. And if it's clear and it's inspiring, I think you're going to see a lot of people love that and make it easier for them to love the people they work with.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with the church today, and we were just talking about not just personality types, but I love to use the leading from your strengths assessment. And we were talking about their results and how they can work together as a team and all that stuff. And I was just saying how certainly with different personalities and whenever you're leading, whenever you're trying to lead up or communicate with your boss, maybe you have to know what they value, speak their language, all of that. And so this list is kind of like you telling people, this is what I value. So when I'm making decisions or I have input, you can pretty much guess that a lot of that is driven by this, which you're right. Most people don't have that. They don't give the people on their team like a list like this that tells them, oh, that's why you care about this, or that's why you tend to go this way whenever this kind of decision comes up. So was the list always 10, or did it actually grow? Was there like the Monahan 5 and then the Monahan 8?
No, I don't think I gave like the Monahan 10 like a name until probably a couple years ago, maybe like 5 or 6 years ago when I first came on staff. I mean, like some of it was casual conversations, and then people that worked with me when they were, for an extended period of time when they were leaving, I would always say, hey, take a look at this and see if these are still true for me. Because, as you get older, there's things you care more about and there's things you care less about. And there's, depending on the position that you have. I mean, like I've been in positions like I am right now where I have a larger staff that I'm direct to. And I've been in positions that have been a little bit more multi-site, and it's kind of like dotted line stuff, not really a boss, but more of like, a brother kind of thing, encouraging. And so depending on where you're at, and then I've been in places where I just had 1 or 2. This is actually really good if you had an administrative assistant or somebody who can help understand you. And it's kind of a cheat sheet. It's like Cliff Notes, of into your boss's life and into and honestly into your admin's life. I want to know what they think. It's kind of like the love languages for leadership. Oh, leadership love languages. Let's write that book.
the 10 leadership love languages.
Yeah.
Kevin Monahan from Kevin Monahan.
I think if you look at mine, I'm happy to like give you the Dropbox link so you can send it to other people. If you look at them, they're real simple. They're very practical because I wanted someone to not wonder what I was thinking. I wanted it to be pretty clear, but it's also not supposed to be a recipe. It's not like, hey, you need 6 eggs and then you set these and you beat the eggs and then it's like, I wanted to, this is always a conversation. I don't email these to somebody and say, hey, here's me. I sit down with them with a cup of coffee or over a meal and I say, hey, let me share, and I share this story about my wife and I share about this. This is a conversation with another person who wants to do well in their job, just like the rest of us do, who has insecurities about their job, just like the rest of us have. And what I'm trying to do is build that relationship early on and create a sense of transparency and openness. And so that's kind of where it is, and it's modeled. And I've had people come back and say, you used to say return a phone call within 2 days. And you know what? You are probably closer to 2 hours. And then I'm like, then I got to be reasonable, right? Because sometimes as a leader, there's certain things that we want that aren't reasonable, And so when I read this, I'm even giving them permission to hold me accountable to this. So I can't say return an email or a phone call within 24 hours. And then harp on them when they don't do it in 6. And, so there's a lot into that. And listening to theirs, man, I've had a lot of really good employees that I value with my team right now. Like a lot of them that have gone through this and done a really great job. And I didn't know that about them, and that helps me understand how they receive attention. How I can make them feel insecure and not meaning to, and I love my team. I love the people I get to serve with and the privilege it is to be with them. So, yeah.
So your wife had, according to your mother-in-law, 2 things. You have 10 things. Does that make you like more needy? No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, for sure.
She's pretty easy to please then compared to your list of 10.
Yeah, my wife is so much the best part of me. For like both, the best part of me has always been Megan. No, there's no doubt about that. No, I think I think I think what you're asking, even tongue in cheek, is the aspect of why it's 10 is the fact that I would give this to direct employees and then maybe people that are direct to the people under me, because people see things different, and you're going to look in there. Some of these are spiritual. Some of them are complete business. Some of them are leadership things. And as you and I, like starting Ministry Boost together, and with Kenny, and other stuff that we've been done, man, our hearts are so focused on helping provide leadership in next gen ministry. And man, I am so blessed to be at 12 Stone, where leadership is part of our culture. But I've also been at places where it wasn't. And the majority of student and family and children's pastors, college leaders I have, don't have anybody giving them wisdom around this. They just got to sink or swim. I mean, that was it, Early on, like I'd get a job and then I'd be there for like a year and a half, and they were sick of me and I was sick of them, and I'd move on because it just wasn't, I had nobody pouring into me and I didn't know what I was doing, And so now it's like, let's give some clarity to this, and I want you to win. You want to win, so let's win together. And if we're not, I'm going to tell you why ahead of time, so.
Yeah, and this list could be 20. I love that it's 10 things. It could be 20 things because it, like you said, it really hits a bunch of different areas, and the more clarity there is, the better. So, I mean, if it was a bigger list. Now, I know people listening are like, okay, I need some things on the list. Like you guys have been talking about it, kind of teasing it.
Yeah.
Give us some examples of some of the things that are on the Monahan 10.
Okay, so I'll give you, well, there's 10. I'm not going to give you all 10, but like, I think one of them in there, and these are no order to you. I don't think, like people ask me, are these like in order? I'm like, no, they're not. And they're not the 10 commandments. This is a living, breathing, document. It's going to change and all stuff. But for me, like, number 2 for me is confidentiality creates trust, and trust is everything. So I work in a job where, a lot of it is HR, a lot of it is protection of children and students and all of that stuff. And I have to feel like I trust people and that they trust me. And man, any church, man, there's gossip and there's situations where it's okay for somebody to share, but then there's a lot of situations where it's not. And if you and I are having a conversation and we say, hey, we got to keep this between us, and it doesn't, trust is a whole, it's really hard for me to trust. And I go in with the default is I want to see the best in people. I'm an optimist in that, but I can also, once that's violated, especially to the nth degree, it's really hard to recover in that, as far as leadership. I already went over the one, like respond to every email within like 24 hours. I just feel like some of this is just the difference in cultures. I think most people over 30 like thrive on email, and then like everybody else, like some of the millennials and even younger, it's just text. And I've had many of young workers come in there and they check their email like once a week because that's what they did in college.
Yeah.
And I've got, like emails, like texting is the heartblood of where we're at, but I had to learn that. And I think that's, for me,
I have a question. Can I pause there for a second?
Please.
We have like a totally different policy there. It's respond to like a phone call or a text within 24 hours, but email is a week. And that's really driven by our pastor because he doesn't like email. And now granted, he doesn't, I don't know if I've ever seen him not reply to an email for a week, but he'll take 2 or 3 days, for sure. So he liked a week, and he really wants to reinforce too, if something's urgent, don't use email. But for you, does that actually work? I mean, do most staff, they do that and like, oh yeah, sure, I'm on it. So, cause I even think I do not reply. Part of it again is probably what the culture has allowed, but I don't reply to emails in 24 hours, and I'm on email every day.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure it does. Yeah. And I would tell you, even at 12 Stone, I mean, like the behind the scenes on this, who your boss is, who your direct report is, really, really matters. Because they're like, I have a constant opportunity to champion the staff that serve for, and I've got great staff. And so it really matters. Oh yeah, for sure. I've had multiple conversations with people. Remember, I'm having this on the front end. So I'm like, hey, listen, you need to respond to this, is be checking that. And it's funny because then you get the people who are really like anal retentive, and they're like, hey, I'm going to check, like they respond really quickly. And I'll be honest with you, by nature, if someone's that responsive, I'm going to continue to ask their opinion and get more stuff. And we're such a relational church, and I love that. But sometimes, man, if you're not in that conversation, it can escape. If you don't answer it in 2 days, we're on the 3 other ones. We're just fast moving, which is such a great advantage when you go on vacation. Because honestly, I may have 200 emails, but 100 of those have worked themselves out from the time that it was beginning. The other thing is I've learned our culture. Like if I start cranking out emails at 9 o'clock in the morning, by the time noon comes, I'm going to have 4 times as many because I'm starting to create stuff. You know what I'm saying? And that's how the momentum goes. There's something like even number 4 for me is like, come prepared, say what you mean and mean what you say. I get it. Like, you're not going to insult me, like come and just say what you mean and mean what you say.
Which is so rare in organizations, but even churches, right? I think that's actually rare where a team culture is we actually say what we mean and mean what we say. For the most, I think probably where it shows itself the most is where you don't say what you actually mean. You know what I mean? Like, you probably mean what you say. You probably don't say everything that you mean. You probably don't say your whole opinion. You probably don't voice your whole frustration. I think that's probably pretty common, but it's not good. So it's good that you're saying on the front end, kind of setting the expectation, like, no, you should always say what you mean and mean what you say. Like, share your voice all the time.
I mean, how you say it is important, right? I mean, you don't want to just bust the door down like that. But I want you, if I've hurt your feelings, if I've disrespected you, oh man, that breaks my heart. And I want to know that. I want to hear that. I don't want to keep doing, and I've done that. I'm a quick-witted person who thinks of something in the instant. And there have been some things that cut people, and I don't want to do that, and I don't want to hurt that. I don't want to seem like I'm, privileged or entitled to something. I don't. If that hurts your feelings and I don't know everybody's story, and their background. And so if there's something like that, if there's something you don't understand, come talk to me. I want it to know it. Because here's the other thing is I'm going to reciprocate that. That's one of those things that people have told me is like, all right, tell me like, what's the, like I say this all the time. I'm like, okay, what's the question behind the question you're asking me? Because, people like meander around the question and I'm like, no, get to the real question. Oh, I want to know if I can not be here. Okay, well then ask me that.
Yeah.
Can I have Sunday off? How many Sundays have you taken? Well, I don't really have. Okay, then you know the answer. You know what I'm saying? So you can go through that. Number 5, take initiative, move forward. Don't bring me a problem that you can solve. I tell people I tell people this all the time. I've hired you because I believe you're the person to go do your job. I don't want to know it all, and I certainly don't want to do it all. So go solve the problem. Now, if you come in and I have this happen all the time, I say, if someone comes in and says, hey, I just want to listen. I just want you to hear me out, or I'm processing this idea, and they go through it, great. Because the same thing happened with my wife. I think it was like our 10-year anniversary. We were sitting there and we were just kind of reminiscing, and we were trying to figure out where we went for every anniversary for the first 10 years. And we got to like year 4, and then we were like, I don't remember if that year we went to year, because we didn't make a big deal like after year 4, right? You're just kind of like, hey, yeah, we went to this restaurant and then went to Walmart or something like that, at that point. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I remember my wife, and I was like, man, this has been a great 10 years. She said, yeah, but that first year was really, really tough. And I was like floored. And she told me, she's like, what took you a long time to learn was that she's like, sometimes I just want to come to you and I just want to talk. I don't want you to solve it, So if someone comes to me and says, dude, I'm just processing this, I need you to talk. Great. I'll listen to you. I'll give you ideas, but you're the answer. Great. You've identified the problem. Almost anybody can identify the problem, but you're the answer. You're the elementary pastor. You're the college pastor. Great. You've got a problem. Well, how are you going to solve it? And I want to solve it. Now, there may be something that it comes up to and like, dude, I'm just hitting a wall. I've tried this. Great. Then I'll go solve it for you. But go solve it. I believe in you. I trust you. And that's what's going to happen. Number 6 is like, everybody makes mistakes. Learn from them. Don't excuse them. Like, it's just a person of like, oh, I was late and this. Don't give me an excuse. It didn't work. You didn't prepare. You made a bad choice. Own it. Take a deep breath and move forward. You're a smart person. I'm a smart person. I'm going to know half the time when you just halfway did it. So that's it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's better, because then it kind of goes to trust too. Like if you own it, you build trust. If you don't, you lose it.
Yeah. And let's see, spell check, bullet point, over communicate. I think some of that has to do with multi-site. I think that has to do with emails. I think that what people don't understand is like emails can be like brought up months later. And if it's not clear, that's your problem. I mean, the biggest, like, it's like that old saying goes, like, the biggest problem with communication is thinking that it actually happened. So there's that aspect of, man, over communicate stuff, like spell check, like present it well. If you're going to, especially if it's to a group of large people, not a large group of people, not a group of large people, you know,
a large group of people.
Yeah, there.
And that was his document everything, and you kind of referenced multi-site, but I'd love you to explain that more. Why document everything?
Well, I think there's a few things. I think a lot of times when people get to talking, we use the same vocabulary, but a different dictionary. And what I mean by that is we're talking about the same things, but we define things differently. Or we'll have a great idea and be like, okay, let's do this. And in a relational culture like ours, and myself, I'm the worst. Like, we sit there and we talk and we got ideas. Let's go do this. But if someone's not taking notes, someone's not documenting, you're relying on your memory or your impression of that meeting, and then time goes by, people start building. I mean, I've had my name used in vain before. They're like, oh, Monahan said this. And I'm like, I don't even remember saying that. And it was like, why not document it? So we have somebody that takes notes at you know, our staff meetings. We have, when we're talking about that, like leadership pipelines, I got a great guy right now who's in business school, and he's helping me get these leadership and just documenting and grafting it and taking those ideas, because we're going to at some point have to transfer those to somebody else. And I'd rather, just like you and I are talking about, this document itself is documented. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's tangible, it's repeatable, it can be emailed, it doesn't need a whole lot of explanation. And so where if we were just talking about stuff, you just don't know what's happening. Let me move on so we can move, you know, faster. 8 is be thankful and appreciate others. I think, man, a prayer that I've had for a long time is, you know, this attitude of gratitude. And it's like, Lord, let me be thankful in everything so that I feel entitled to nothing. And man, at the end of the day, what a privilege and an honor it is to serve in ministry, to serve in our churches, to serve kids and students. I mean, most of us, like, our biggest problem mystery is a volunteer didn't show up and Wi-Fi was slow or data management. Like, when I think about my Christian brothers and sisters around the world that, like, don't have enough to eat or are feeling about being physically persecuted, man, our problems are really small. And, man, dude, we did something really great today, just praying in our services for people during a song. And it was just, man, I'm just thankful to be at a place that breaks in prayer. And that's where we really surrender control to the Lord, and praying with people and being just this attitude of thankfulness. Entitlement frustrates me with people, man. And people think, well, I just got this job, or I got this job description. Man, throw all that junk out the window. At the end of the day, just serve people and be thankful for people. And man, we love thankful people that, you know, that involves, like, you know, sending handwritten notes, texts to people, caring for people, group texts, just loving on people, man. It's just this attitude. And then finally, man, I know we've covered some of them, but the last one this is my favorite, is make the problem, not the person. That there's a huge difference between personal and professional issues. You know, like, for me, when someone comes in and says, oh, Kenny did this, you just made that person the problem. Now, don't get me wrong, Kenny may have done something bad, but at the end of the day, let's figure out what the problem is first. You know, like, I don't like it when we attack one another. I think of Jesus, one of his final prayers was, Father, pray that they are one like you and I are one. I mean, here's the Lord praying for unity of us on a team. And we have to fight for unity. Unity, it requires a lot of work. And so I think some of that is, man, make the problem. Tell me the problem. Dude, we've got a difference of opinions between how of what sermon series we should do. That's the problem. It's not Kenny sees something different than me. It's not Emily's doing this. It's not, you know, David's doing this or Caleb's doing this. It's this aspect of, man, let's figure out what the problem is. That's what we're there to solve problems. Leaders, solve problems. I love when Maxwell says that leaders solve problems. And so, yeah, so these are the 10, man. There's a few other ones like clarifying, evaluating. That's just me. I'm a metric nerd. I love measuring things and being able to clarify things. If you can't clearly measure it and evaluate it, and then why even do it?
Yeah. And how do you know if it's working or not?
Yeah. How do you know? And that's why we go back to the win and we get there and say, I've had staff over the year be like, yeah, but I'm there at the 9:00 every week. I'm like, well, yes, that's your job, but not just to be present. You got to be proactive, and let's figure out, how do you know if you're winning? It must not, it never should be just about, well, I had butts in seats. How do you know? How do you know if you're winning? I've got another list of like 10 different things to measure in student ministry and in children ministry to know if they're successful. And we document, and we have multiple discussions over those. And then we document and say things like, it's attendance. Great. It's how many leaders you have. Great. It's like how many kids are in small groups, how many kids feel called to missions, how many baptisms, how many salvations, how many kids go into baby dedication, how many, new leaders, how many students are serving somewhere else in the church. There's so many different things that we have to measure, but you have to document, and you have to clarify those, and you have to say yes to something in order to say no to something else. And so that's why I think sitting down and evaluating those things are so helpful. I'm trying to think, man. I think that's it,
Now everybody's going to want your list of 10 measures for student ministry and 10 measures for children's ministry.
I'll those too, but I think some of those come out of prayer and focus, and I said some of them, but it's just, man, those come with conversations of defining the win, because, dude, let's go run the race, man. Paul talks about we got to run that race, but I got to know where I'm going. You know what I mean? I need somewhat of a map, and the Bible is never supposed to be a map as much as it's supposed to be a guide. And I think that's the beauty of it. It's like one of my favorite Catholic priests says, that there's only one way to get to God through Jesus Christ, but there's 10,000 ways to get to Jesus. And I love that. Everybody's story is different, and I think the same way, man, is like, what you at your church may value is a little bit different. I think there's going to be some foundational stuff, but yeah, man. And any of that stuff, I'm happy to share. As long as you pray through it and see what works and what doesn't. And I can put those on a Dropbox or send it to you, or whatever you need, my friend.
Yeah, that'd be great. And obviously a lot of this, like you mentioned early on, is from experience leading staff. But of course, people could use this with volunteers. That would make a lot of sense. But you do have a lot of experience leading staff in larger churches, and as a NextGen pastor specifically. And we got, with Ministry Boost, we're launching all these courses and coaching this fall. You're going to coach a group of NextGen pastors. So people that want to, I was just emailing with somebody today that's going to sign up for your group.
Oh, fantastic, man. Great.
And you and Kevin and Kenny and I are going to lead this Align Your NextGen Team course, which I'm excited about because I feel like it's probably the number one question I get from anybody who's a new NextGen pastor. But what are you excited about with coaching and even that course this fall?
Well, the most exciting thing to me is meeting new NextGen pastors. Like every year that you and I mean, this would be almost the third year, right? You and I have been doing stuff like this. Is, even in those groups, I know I may know one or two by name or whatever, but man, the relational equity of spending an extended period of time together is awesome, because you get to dive in and there's confidentiality in this. We're not typing anybody's senior pastor, and we're not doing any of that. And so like, that's probably the relational equity. I think the other thing is just helping. I always like the people that this is their kind of first time into NextGen ministry. Like they've either been in kids ministry for a long time and now they're moving up to oversee kids and students, or they've been in student ministry for a little time and now they're going to bring up kids. That's the one I like, because I can kind of relate to that. I was in student ministry long before I started doing children's ministry. So I like that. I love when people bring the chaos and bring the issues and say, hey, man, this is what I'm struggling with, and the learning and the connecting of sitting with a group of people, and what one person's strengths is another person's weakness, and they share that in this collaboration that isn't like pretty at the beginning, but we go through it, it's like, man, it just feels good to know somebody else has some of the same struggles. It's great to be able, like, man, that church is killing it. Like, today even, like, because of some of these, because I was, our friend Allie Evans, I was texting her because she put something on Insta story about like the bags in kids ministry that she gives to new families. And I was like, send me a picture of that bag and what you put in it. And she did. And like, that would never have happened if we didn't have like a group of people working together. And it's like, I'm taking that, I'm bringing it back to my children's team, and we're going to start working on that within the next few weeks. And there's some really, really great ideas in that. And that stuff, that whole collaboration of, man, we are so much wiser and stronger together. And so, yeah, man. And, just the intentionality, I think every year and every time that we do this, like Align Your Next Gen ministry, I think we get better at it. And I think we learn from the previous people and the newer people. And man, it's super exciting. Of course, man, I'm excited doing it with you and Kenny. It's always great to work with people, that we have fun with, and other professionals, that love to come in and do that. And so, man, I love the teamwork, the collaboration, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And, man, I cannot wait for October and for all those courses to begin. So yeah, I got a multi-site one, I got a next gen one, and then we're doing the, Align Your Next Gen team. So, man, jump in, people. It's going to be fantastic. I can't wait to learn from you guys too.
Yep, same here. I have to ask, can you send me the picture that Allie texted you so I could know what's in the bag?
Yes, now you want that one, right? But
of course.
But that's the contagious aspect of it. Is like, dude, we are just like dealers in hope. That's it, man. At the end, that's hope with an H, not dope. But like, like at the end of the day, that's all I am, is a hope dealer. It's like, man, how do you get this stuff and all of those kind of like resources. And her and I have talked many a times, and it's like, oh dude, I just stole this from somebody else, and somebody else did it, and somebody else got this great idea. Best idea wins, man. Let's just go after it.
Yeah, and share it, which is great. Well, I'm looking forward to everything this fall as well. So, and all the courses and coach you're doing, that multi-site coaching group will be helpful too. That's definitely a unique niche, as you know, and people are always looking to find out how other churches are doing it. Church I was with today, in fact, you could hear they've launched one site, so they have two sites, but you could hear just how unrefined and undocumented and raw their whole approach is right now, because they've launched one other site, and you know what that's like. It's not the same as when you have 7 or 8 and there's defined systems and processes and what do we do here and what do we not do here. Like they're still figuring all that out, and I know a lot of people want a place to turn for that. So that coaching group's going to be good. How can people connect with you? We'll link the Monahan 10 and anything else you can share with us in the show notes. But how can they connect with you if they have any questions?
Yeah, so I think that probably the best way is actually through ministryboost.org. So you can email me at kevin@ministryboost.org directly if you want. I'll be happy to return emails and stuff. Also on Twitter, it's at Kevin Monahan. That's at Kevin Monahan. And all that stuff is on ministryboost.org. All the classes, all the information, and all the stuff. What we'll do is at some point just open up. That's probably the best way to do that, because then I can kind of keep my work and my like kind of consulting and the fun stuff that comes with kind of separately. So yeah, man, I look forward. That's probably the best way to do it, man. I look forward to connecting with people. And I will tell you that a lot of times people contact me and they're like, hey, I got a question. It's like, actually, I'm going to give you somebody better. It's like, how do you start your own podcast? I have no idea. So my friend Nick Blevins is pretty awesome at it. So how do you do that? So I think there's a lot of times people ask questions, and I'm just a guy who knows a guy probably better than anybody else. So like that's what I'm going to send you to some guy, some gal, maybe this country, maybe Canada, who knows?
Yep. And because that's how all of this works. If somebody asks me how to start a podcast, I'm going to say, there's this great tutorial here. And I learned this from Carey Nieuwhof, so I do this, and I think he does too, and it's been great. In other words, I didn't know any of it. And so I learned it from other people, which is great. Cool, man. Well, thanks for coming back on the podcast, sharing this list with us. Brother. I know people are going to take it and like adapt it, tweak it, and then use it in their own context, but thanks for sharing that with us.
Yeah, pleasure to have you. Thanks, Nick. Appreciate being on again, brother.
That was a great list, wasn't it? I mean, I love a lot of the things that he had on there. There's just some kind of unspoken assumptions or agreements that you expect from those who lead you and those who are on your team. And that list kind of makes them spoken. So I think that really, really helps. I hope you'll find that to be helpful. Maybe you'll take it, adapt it, create your own list, and then share your list. I think those are the action items. Get his list, adapt it, make your own, and then share that with the teams you lead, whether it's volunteers or staff. You really can set clear expectations with a list like that. You can get all the links, including the Monahan 10 and other things that we talked about in the show notes at nickblevins.com/episode 120. Again, just 2 days left to sign up for fall courses and coaching with Ministry Boost. I hope you'll join us. I'm looking forward to all of that getting kicked off, but also the community that we're creating among people who are going to be in courses and in coaching this fall. We'll have like these tribe conversations where we'll get on video calls together, discuss different things. It could be something specific like children's ministry check-in one week, and then next week it's leading staff, and then another week it's student ministry mission trips or whatever it might be. I'm excited for that part. That's just a bonus, a bonus for anybody that's involved with Ministry Boost this fall. But I'm looking forward to the courses, the coaching, but also those tribe conversations. They're going to be a lot of fun. You can check all of that out at ministryboost.org. I hope you'll join us this fall. Well, that's it for this episode of the podcast. I hope it was helpful to you. As always, I appreciate it when you leave a rating and a review in Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to it. And certainly subscribe so you never miss an episode. Hope you have a great week, and I'll catch you next time on the Family Ministry Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Nick Blevins Family Ministry Podcast. We hope this helps you maximize your church's potential. We would love to hear stories of how you apply what you've learned. You can do that by leaving a comment on iTunes or in the show notes at nickblevins.com.